this, so I'm starting the recording, and hopefully that's running okay. I've got a few others that are hopping in, but there are a few things that I wanted to open our conversation with today, and then we'll get started in the more the meat of our time here together. One is, just to be clear, this is more of a casual time, more of a demonstration focused opportunity to come together. I did want to draw attention to that we're hosting this based on the feedback from our assessments that we've done during the last couple of 3 months. Admittedly, we thought that this was last year was a bit of a Band-Aid. We just kind of every few weeks thought, okay, in a few weeks we'll kind of be back to normal. And so we just did the best we could to get through. And so I recognize, though, I think many of us recognize a couple of things. One is this clearly stretched out further than what we thought it was going to. So there was some reach out and ask about how to collect this type of data. So there's been some individual connection, but further, based on the feedback from our assessments, 2 things have occurred. One is, as a faculty group that teaches and so forth, the feedback you provided is that you yourself are very interested in continuing distance teaching as a solid option for your educational presentations, wherever you are, whatever position you are here in the organization. And then further, the feedback that clientele are telling us that they like receiving it this way. Still, there are folks that want to be in a room with us, and we too like to be in a room with others. It's just the type of folk we are. But we realize there's more likely going to be a bit of a hybrid approach and a lot more virtual presentations that will be done. So part of the ask based on the chat in November and then affirmation in January was that we have a demonstration of how to collect this needed demographic data for UMers, but then further for teaching effectiveness that the university requires. So that's why we're here based on your request, and I'm looking forward to having some folks join that I will introduce in just a second. I do want to underscore, teaching effectiveness is required collection from the university, but it's very different if you're a professor on campus rather than us that teach out in the field. And, the students are right there. And at the last class meeting, they often, they'll fill out their evaluation or their teaching effectiveness. We have to be much more creative than that. Further, it is a federal requirement that we must, I put that in big bold letters for myself, as a federally funded organization, have a mechanism to collect federally required demographic data for any direct contact. And so we have to have a process to collect it, and 2, we must not only collect that data, but report that data. And just to be clear, UMers is constructed to collect the required data for our federal report. That was a deliberate decision. I'll underscore that. It was a deliberate decision probably 8 years ago or so to construct UMers to concentrate only on the data that we're required to report back. There's sometimes frustration if we're asking for a lot of data that then we as an organization aren't factually required to use. So that then led to that decision. Quite frankly, I think there's a different school of thought. I've heard from some faculty that they wish UMers was more broad to collect data that then they could use in their CVs or some other pieces. But right now, folks often will collect or keep that in some type of a spreadsheet that then they introduce into their curriculum vitae, impact statements or AFR documents and so forth. So, but that is the purpose of it, and that's why there's some very specific things that are asked for. So I did want to underscore that. But today our topics are going to concentrate on a couple of things. One is demonstration of how to use the poll feature in Zoom, and also the process to capture the collected data and save it in a format that you can then use for those required reports. So I'm thankful to have 3 folk that are going to join us to actually give the meat of the presentations. As was noted, Jackie Takis was going to start off for us, and particularly in her role as our UME P&T coordinator. There's often a lot of questions about teaching effectiveness, collection, and so forth. So she's going to share some information about that, how to collect it. As a side note, there's also some supportive visuals that are being prepared and worked on for all of us. Further, some maybe video vignettes that will be done that are much shorter, just to hone in on specific topics so that folks don't have to watch a whole 50-minute recording. And so we're working on those. I've been in contact with Brad as well as the folks that are here presenting today. So we're working on getting those presented. Further, there's often questions about, I need to check on my teaching effectiveness rating. So Dee Dee Allen has joined us. She's going to give a presentation. And then further, Dr. Latoya Hicks, who's our compliance director, assistant director of compliance, will be joining us for the college, is joining us, and we'll be working toward the required demographic data for UMass for federal reporting. So that'll be the bulk of it. I will be monitoring the chat. Feel free to put questions in at the appropriate times where there's a break, then I'll maybe run back through those. And then at the end, any that we miss, we'll get going. So with that, I'm going to mute myself, and Jackie, you'll be up. I'm going to, let's see, you should be able to share screen. I think I already made you co-host, so thank you.
Okay. So I am not going to share my video, otherwise I'll just be breaking up the entire time. So I am going to just quickly share my screen. So one of the things that Jeff had asked me to discuss was how to collect teaching effectiveness. And so I just want to bring to everybody's attention that the faculty and staff affairs page that we have for UME, this is what it looks like. It's got five tabs, I can't count, 6 tabs. So under you'll find the information that you need under the annual reporting and evaluation section. And as you scroll down, we are to collect teaching effectiveness from both our clientele and our peers every year. If you click on that document or click on that link, you're going to find the requirements that we have. And so most individuals, as I talk to them going through their promotion process, the one thing I constantly hear is, well, I didn't know that. So here's the information. We're encouraged to collect 50 clientele teaching effectiveness surveys across 5 different teaching events annually. So basically 50 participants across 5 different classes should be filling out some type of teaching evaluation for you. And throughout the course of the year, we're supposed to obtain at least 3 peer evaluations across 2 different classes. And so I do periodically get a question of, well, what is a peer? And so, and I might defer to Jeff on this, but how I refer to a peer is somebody from academia who is at your level or above your level who can evaluate your teaching. And so again, there's a lot of us who may teach with a group of individuals, and within that group of individuals, you may have 3 faculty members at your rank or above from another university. They would be an appropriate peer evaluator for you. So again, with peer evaluations, you want to make sure you have 3 of those documents every year. And with that said, on an annual basis, you should be having this conversation with your program leader during your AFR as to whether you have your evaluations or not. And it is critical for the promotion process that you have clientele and peer evaluations, because as part of your promotion dossier, we send along your mean scores for every year. So with that said, I'm going to be talking about this part right here, where you go and you collect your data. And I'm just going to click over to it really quickly. It is going to drop you down to what was our old UME page, which is in another day or so, we're going to be changing that. It won't affect any of you because you're linked right to the right page, but this is where you go to find your teaching effectiveness questions. So you can go in and you can download the hard copy of what the form looks like. And what I have always recommended to faculty, particularly faculty members who are in that first stage of promotion, going for tenure or going for senior agent associate, is that in at least 5 of your programs, hand out paper copies. So that way, you know that data collection is happening. Because the other option is going over to this side of the page and using the web link that's going to take you straight to a Qualtrics, or the QR code that's going to take your clientele directly to a Qualtrics survey. And then your data is collected. It's all collected anonymously. So with that said, this is the way we'd like you to take it. We would love all teaching evaluation information to be collected anonymously. We understand that some of the stuff that we have to take in paper, because one, maybe we don't have individuals who can get access to the internet. And again, as I said earlier, for those in the promotion process, if you hand it out, it's a guarantee you're getting it back. And so once you get those hard paper copies back, the onus is on you to enter them into the system. So you would be entering them into the system by going to the link and entering each piece of evaluative information yourself, or handing it to an admin, which is probably a better thing to do. Handing it to an admin or handing it to a colleague and asking a colleague to enter them. Essentially, we are going to assume academic and professional integrity across the board, that if you collect 10 teaching evaluations, you're going to enter 10 teaching evaluations, good, bad, or otherwise. So with that said, this is the way we've been doing the process for the last probably 7 years at this point. Hopefully this doesn't seem new to anybody. However, we've now moved into the virtual world, and we've been asking people, the questions have come up on, well, how are we supposed to be collecting our teaching evaluations now? And so we can very easily do this in Zoom by creating polls. And again, polls can be collected anonymously, which is great. You can also put the link right in the chat to the Qualtrics survey, and then you don't have to create a poll. So it really is up to you which way you want to do it. If you've got the email addresses of everybody who actually attended your virtual workshop, you could also send the email, send them an email with the link to the Qualtrics survey. You have it there. But one of the things that I've been doing in my programming with Nicole Basenbach is we tag team our presentations, where one person is facilitating, the other person is doing the presentation. And the person who is facilitating is actually the person who sets up the Zoom meeting and sets up the Zoom poll. And so I don't know if everybody has done a poll or not, but I'm just gonna quickly edit a survey I have. I'm gonna edit only this occurrence. But what you wanna do in creating a poll is, I don't know why I'm not seeing my poll thing here. Hold on. Dun, dun, dun. I have my very slow internet moving.
I think you need to save the settings, and then you'll see the poll logo in the bottom. But
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Sorry.
Thanks. Okay. So you're gonna create your meeting, your webinar, your teaching event, and then you're going to save that, go back to it, and at the bottom of it, you're going to be able to open up a poll. So I haven't created any polls yet. One of the things that we're also going to have in the handout for you is how to create this your teaching event as a template. So I'm actually gonna, it's probably easier if I open up one of my templates. So I have a teaching template that I can use. If I go into my teaching template, every time I create a new teaching template, it's going to give me a new distinct URL for people to go to. I can go into my polls, and I can go in and I can basically go in and create a poll. So we're going to give you the the instructions on how to create a poll. This is what I want to show rather than take a ton of time of telling you how to type in a poll, which I'm sure a lot of you have done before, is you're simply going to go and take those 5 questions that we ask from the Qualtrics survey, and you're going to put it into one large poll within your teaching program. And so I have another poll here for demographics. I may have, if I'm actually doing the teaching, I may want to ask questions of my participants along the way. So in this one teaching event, I could have 5 or 6 or 7 polls if I wanted to. 7 would probably be a little bit too crazy. But the last poll that I want to give during my workshop is this teaching effectiveness poll. The only data we can't capture that we would otherwise be able to capture using Qualtrics is there is a 6th question, and the 6th question is an open-ended question about other things that as a participant you would like to say about the presenter, about the topic, anything else. And of course, in Zoom, we don't have the ability to do short answer questions. So you would essentially create this poll. And what we end up doing is at the end of a presentation, while the speaker was doing a Q&A session or a Q&A 5 minutes at the end, your co-host or the host, the person that you were working with would then launch this poll. So this poll is being collected while the Q&A is going on. It's kind of off to the side and you're collecting all that data. So once you collect that data, you are going to go back to your main page and you're going to open up your reports section. You're going to go into your meetings. And I recommend that you do this within a month of when you had your meeting, because after about 6 months, Zoom isn't going to be holding all your data anymore, all the raw data. So once you download the reports, it'll stay in there. But what you want to make sure is that really the next day or within that week that you're going into your Zoom reports and you're generating a meeting report or a poll report. So you're simply going to come in, you're going to be on this meeting report or on this report page. It doesn't really matter, to be honest, whether you click meeting or poll. But if you want to see all your poll reports, you can say, and so I'm going to pull up reports for a full month. Give me my reports for a month. What polls did I take? So you will see that according to Zoom, that I hosted 8 events that may have collected a poll. And so in this case, I know I actually didn't collect a poll for any of these because in my personal room is set up already that every time I host using my personal room, I have a poll attached to it. I don't use the poll. So this says I do have polls, but if I have done a poll, I would simply click the event that had a poll, and then I would hit the download button off here to the side, which I can't, the generate button off to the side. Once you hit generate, a report is going to end up in your report queue, and you can see that there is no right now date limitation. And Brad, you can tell me if it dumps it, but right now I have well over 6 months worth of data in here. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you an Excel spreadsheet. And so let me show you what that Excel spreadsheet looks like if I can get my Zoom stuff out of my way so I can find it. This is what the Excel spreadsheet is going to look like. So this was the data that Nicole Basenbach and I collected. Actually, I collected this for her. She was actually the presenter at the time. She was doing a backyard composting workshop. And so this is the data that we collected. It was done on the 23rd of this past June. You can see we have person number 1 that answered 5 questions. Here's question 1. Here's the answer. Now, yes, this is a huge spreadsheet that somebody now has to go into the system and enter line by line. And so we are lucky enough that we have a great admin who we were able to send this document to. And when she had time, she was able to enter each one of these. In this case, if we didn't have an admin because it was Nicole teaching, I would enter the data for her. That way, again, it just adds a level of professional ethics to it. So I would enter all the data for her. If if we didn't have an admin, she would enter all of my data. So again, trying to keep it sort of like the way that the university has anonymity between the individuals who are giving the data and the fact that as the educator, as the person who's being evaluated, I can't augment the data because it's being entered by somebody else. So that's kind of what we've been doing. It's been very effective, very quick and easy to do. And honestly, very painless to be honest. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. There's some other polling. Again, this is the biggest thing is that you do not want to link any of your teaching evaluation data with any single individual. So one of the questions when you're setting up your poll is this poll anonymous? And you must click yes, because you do not want to link any of that data with a specific individual. So that's about what I have. And as Jeff said, we're creating a document that's going to give you each step on how to do this.
So thank you, Jackie. And yes, I've had a little bit of advantage is that I've had a sneak peek at the document that's being referenced. And y'all, when I say literally step by step, it's every screenshot. There's an arrow, go here, go here. So recognizing we have multiple learning styles, some are more visual, others need to read it, some, you know, and so forth. And as I mentioned, then we're also working behind the scenes to do some shorter video vignettes to just kind of hit the highlights for those that prefer to learn that way. So we'll follow on that. Jackie, most of the questions were things like if I'm giving multiple presentations over the course of a year, but maybe the same person comes, you know, can we collect every time, you know, each time? And so that was answered, but just so that in case folks didn't see it, yes, it's a different, if it's a different teaching experience, you know, they're evaluating how you're teaching at that time and providing that. So even though they may come to multiple things, some folks though.
Right, because you could be having a bad day. I mean, you could be stellar for 4 out of 5 sessions.
Some folks though, if they're doing like a maybe 6 workshops as a series, you may choose to collect that on the 6th one. If it's the same people they registered, it's a sequential, you know, presentation. Many of our folks that work with our volunteers may do some trainings with them as an example, or, you know, constituents the same way, but it's more of a workshop series. It's up to you how you'd like to do that. I will say, you know, our, go ahead, Jackie.
So Jeff, so Jonathan Kays has a comment, which I totally agree with Jonathan. His comment was, this sounds very time consuming. Wouldn't using Qualtrics be more efficient? Absolutely. So my first and foremost for everybody is, if you can take your appropriate Qualtrics link, put it in the chat, be comfortable that everybody is going to click on it before they drop off at the end of your talk. Or if you have the email contacts for everybody who participated in your class, the first thing I would say is, yes, please use the Qualtrics. It's definitely less time consuming. The reason I suggest a poll, or the individuals whom I would suggest a poll for, would be those individuals who are in the promotion process, who really need to guarantee that surveys are being collected. Because I know, you know, and it's happened to me as well, just because you send somebody a link to fill out a teaching evaluation does not mean they're going to do it. And you can hound them for a month after your workshop, and you can go on, and Dee Dee's going to show you how to check to see whether evaluations are collected. But you really have to make sure that you're going and you're double checking that people in your program, or people who went through your program, actually do the evaluation. So if I can capture 30 evaluations instantaneously versus sending an email where only 3 do it, and then sending a second email where 3 more people might do it, and then sending and again, if I'm at the principal agent rank, or I'm not worried about, if I'm not stressing about having teaching evaluations, I might go that route. But if I'm somebody who's in the promotion process, or in the promotion timeline, and I need to be getting and showing teaching evaluations, especially 50 per year, per year, I may want to collect some myself so that I am positive I have teaching evaluations for that promotion process.
I'll just interject. Dee Dee's put a note, Jackie, just as you said, that she'll be touching on that. But just to underscore, there was a request from our group about this as an option. But so it's certainly an option, but we don't want to imply that this is now the expected approach whatsoever. As Jonathan draws attention to, if folks were to ask me, and quite frankly, this is still how I do it, the process that is more historically used to generate the link in Qualtrics to give to people is what I still do. That's why we've asked everyone, make sure you do a registration, you collect their email. So afterward, I send a note to them and then ask them to complete that. But the reality is they may or they may not. And then, we look back and we go, oh my gosh, only, 20 people responded. And there's some more effort. You have to follow up, maybe another follow-up email to say, hey, if you haven't done this, I really need your help. Please do that. While there's certainly an implication on promotion for all of us in regard to collection of this and the requirement for the university, its other core purpose is for us to improve ourselves, our own teaching. And, I sometimes get comments that say your session went over. That's fair. I'm notorious for that. And so I've got to do better about my timing and these types of things. And so I can improve. But, there's a couple of three purposes. So, but we still, the more historic system still is both available, sharing the link and so forth. And even at that, before we went into virtual teaching, I would generate the form and give that out at my workshops, have someone else collect it up, so that I didn't see it, seal it and sign it. And then when I got back to my office, I would give it to, one of our support folk to work with to enter. So, there were some variations that could be done, but Dee Dee's going to expand on that. The other questions I think were answered. I'm just scrolling back through before Dee Dee hops on. There was about if you're working with a large group of teachers, perhaps some of them could do a peer evaluation, but others provide teaching effectiveness. Absolutely, they could just provide that. And then the question about separate events. So I think we're good there. So with that, we did want, the question often comes of where am I at? How can I check to see if folks have filled this out and so forth? So Dee Dee's gonna hop on and address that topic. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I wanted to touch on what Jackie was just saying. I've in the last week or so, I have been sending out teaching effectiveness evaluations, the summaries to everyone. And I've heard from a lot of people that they're very disappointed with the response because they had assumed that more people have filled out the evaluations. So what I'm going to do today is show you where to look so you can see where your data resides, and then prompt the people that you can prompt to complete them. So I found a new feature last night, and you're going to be my guinea pigs today. I'm going to share my screen, and my PowerPoint is going to be my background. So let's see. Not that, not that, not that. And now I can't find it. Oh no. Okay, let's see. Goodness gracious, I apologize. And here we go, finally. Sorry, thanks for your patience. So what I wanted to do, I thought I could have a poll so we could see how many actually know where to go. So we're gonna do a quick poll. And oh my goodness, I have someone else's poll. Nice Aditi.
You have Jeff's poll from one of his.
I
old-
have it. I'm sorry, Jeff. I just ruined your poll.
So Dee Dee, unless you put the poll in Jeff's meeting, he would have had to have done that for you.
That's right. Never mind. Back I go.
Unintended teachable moment, though. That's fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did really well. All right. So I was preparing my PowerPoint and I did a little ditty of where do those surveys go? Where can they be? And I decided I've been home too long because I actually sung it to a tune last night, and it was where's my little dog gone? So to get started, we are going to Qualtrics.com. It's ume.qualtrics.com, and what we need to be specific about, the university has a Qualtrics license as well, and as university employees, we all have access to that too. There is a umd.qualtrics.com and there's a ume.qualtrics.com, and that is where our teaching effectiveness lies. So if you go to ume.qualtrics.com, at login, you're going to see a list of projects, and in the projects, you should be able to see dashboards. If you can't see dashboards, that's when you need to get in touch with me, and I can give you access to that. So when we open our dashboards, this is the administrative view. This is the overarching view of all of our teaching effectiveness since we began gathering in, I think it was 2016. So you can see that we have 22,002 responses, and it's really interesting, I think. But in our the most responses we have, it's also broken out by category, and it's the financial category. So then the Master Gardeners is the next down. But the administrators are the only people who can see these, and that would be program leaders and a few other people can see this for this view. And an educator will be able to see this view, and it shows you how many responses for your teaching. It can show you what the breakdown is of the workshops that you've taught by subject matter. It gives you the responses. You can see all of the responses to all the 5 questions. I've added a little word cloud just because I'm a fan of word clouds. I just put that widget in there. There's also one more. I didn't show you on this screen because it's confidential, but also all of their comments are in the screen there as well. You'll be able to see the comments of all the participants. So this is where we got into the how do we gather it. So we can gather it by email if you have used registration and gathered emails. There's a QR code you could actually share on screen if you were interested in doing it that way. You can do an anonymous link. That will be in the chat. You would have to put the anonymous link in. And then at the end of Zoom, there's also a feature that you can redirect, you could direct it to the survey. So that's an option as well. So Jackie mentioned this. I'll give you a little bit more information. Right now, UME Answers is the top link. But in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be going to a cloud-based function, and everything for UME Answers will be there. We'll give you more information about that. Definitely, you'll hear more from us about that. But if you go to UME Answers, the front page is there's a professional development link. And if you go to the professional development link, it will take you to teaching effectiveness. The teaching effectiveness it's part of the old site, but everything is there that you would need. All of there that you can, there's a link, there's a hard copy, there's a QR code. And one of our instructors years ago made a postcard that is 4-up that has the QR code and the link and instructions. And they also put their name in, because sometimes people at your presentations really don't remember the name of the instructor or can't spell the instructor's name, or don't know what the presentation, what classification they should put the class in. So you could use that as well to personalize it for whatever class you're teaching. And I think that's it. If anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I don't think there's anything more.
So the couple of questions that have come up, some were just from some of our 4-H folks in particular asking about sending out links. The reality is that for teaching effectiveness, there's an age limitation. And so it's the same application as it would be if you were in person. There was a further question, though, that said, if their parents join them, can we ask the parents to fill one out? Absolutely. We can't ask the children that are younger than 14 to do that, but their parents certainly could if they participate, you know, if they were there with their child. No worries to do that. There was a question about written instructions for the things that you've shared, Dee Dee. So there's a couple of 3 spots where there's some information currently to help us with how to generate reports, but we're working toward some follow-up for these based on the specific presentation that was mentioned for some printed material, and then as we mentioned about those video vignettes and so forth. So in short, yes, it will particularly about how to follow back up. And one of the go-tos is reach out to Dee Dee, then she can help you. But I know that just learning how to do it is, of course, what we're seeking. So I appreciate the questions.
So Jeff, let me just really add quickly, because I don't know if anybody misses this in the chat, but there was the question about collecting data from youth under 14, and that we don't do that. And I always encourage people that if there are adults in the room, please try to collect teaching evals from them. But for those of you that a bulk of your teaching evaluation is, or bulk of your teaching is to youth under the age of 14, I just want to recognize for all of you that as it pertains to promotion, when we put forward your teaching evaluation summaries, there is a notation on the bottom of those teaching summaries that your primary audience is youth under the age of 14, and that we do not collect data from those individuals. So I just want you all to know that we are recognizing that, and we're making sure that reviewers also understand that we cannot take evaluation data from that. But we do encourage you to take, if you've got 3 teachers in the room, have one teacher do the peer evaluation, have the other ones do the clientele evaluation. Just any adults that happen to be there, get them to take those evaluations for you.
So there's some other questions that are in the chat, which are good ones. So we're going to transition though over to Dr. Hicks and have her begin her portion of the session, and then we'll start to respond in the chat back to folks with some of the specific questions that are there. So LaToya, you're on. Thanks.
Okay. Going back and forth with the screens. Good morning. Well, yeah, good morning, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the demographic section. As Jeff noted earlier, it is a requirement for us to collect demographics of our participants. And I do want to provide you a little bit of the background. So the current standard in the Office of Management and Budgeting, they have a statistical policy division and a directive that has provided the common language to promote uniformity and comparability for data on race, ethnicity, and gender for the populations within the United States. They were developed in cooperation with federal agencies to provide consistent data on race and ethnicity, more in particular, to ensure that data standards stem from a large measure from new responsibilities to enforce civil rights. Data was needed in order to monitor equal access in regards to maybe housing or education, employment, and other areas for populations that historically had experienced discrimination and differential treatment based solely on their differences. Of course, these standards are not used only in the decimal census, which provides us the data for the denominator for many measurements, but they're also utilized in household surveys, medical information. You may have seen it on registration forms, mortgage applications, so on and so forth. Of course, these categories represent a social political construct designed to and for collecting demographic on race and ethnicity for broader populations. So the information that I'm going to provide you today, of course, would serve as a compliance instrument and inclusivity measurement for faculty and staff within the College of Agriculture, no matter if you're with Mays or Extension or even in the academic departments. The noted framework, of course, would demonstrate your ability to collect those demographic informations, more specifically on your direct contacts, and understanding that if we do provide information for indirect contacts or our subrecipients, we would do that as well, okay? My mouse don't want to work. The purpose of collecting information, of course, again, because Mays and UME are direct recipients of federal financial assistance, you're required to have a system to collect data. Now, it could be called UMERS, it could be called Alphabet, it really doesn't matter, as long as it has a system in place that you can be able to assess the reliability and validity of that data. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully this works. Share. You see like some little Zoom thing, right? Give me a thumbs up if you do.
Yes,
Okay.
we see it.
Okay, so I did it right.
Well, you may want to launch or start your PowerPoint though, because it's showing all of the things on the, or.
No, I'm gonna go over here first.
Okay, all right.
So, and I don't want to be so repetitive because Jackie and Dee Dee already went through most of this information. But of course, you would start your meeting. And you would schedule it, and then of course you have to ensure that you make your meeting required, right? There's a little thing right here that says required for registration, and then you would go down and you would save this information, right? So then once this template has been established, like Brad has noted, you can continue to use these type of templates once you build that inside of the system. Of course, this would be the web-based registration link you can provide to your participants to participate. When you scroll down, you'll see, let me move you from over here because I see all of us over here. Move this over. You'll see over here, it says edit. Once you edit this information, of course, like Jackie noted, you can create these custom questions. Now, why is this information important? Over here, you would want to create some custom questions in a part of your registration process to collect, i.e. reasonable accommodation requests for information, and provide the notification to our participants that this institution is an equal opportunity provider. That should be the standard information that goes out on your registration so they can understand this information. Of course, you would create that. I'll just type something right here and I'll say create, and then I'll save it. And then of course that information would be populated on your registration form, okay? You also go into the poll section, right? And this is building your poll prior to your meeting. You go to add. Now, I would like to say that when you're creating the registration information, the only customized question that we are suggesting that you utilize is the program assurance statement, i.e. this institution is an equal opportunity provider. You cannot use the long one because it has a character count, but you can use that one, and then you'll create a second question which talks about the reasonable accommodation piece and who to contact if an individual needs that information. Self-identification is not appropriate at this time. And you're gonna say, well, why? So let's go to simple math. So let's say you create the demographics at this time and you receive 50 registration requests for participating in your program or your activity. And the day of your program, you only get 25 people who show up. Who's in attendance? You don't know, right? You can't just start guessing. So in order to ensure that you remove that validity concern, therefore, we're suggesting the collection of the demographics should occur prior to the start of your educational delivery. Just like if you were to have it in person, you would have a registration table, or you would have a table where you would have your And Justice for All poster, and you would have the list of information for people to put their name, where they live, the county, whatever, and then you'll have a separate document in order to collect demographic information. Some may prefer to do this after your presentation via Zoom, but again, I will caution you that an individual no longer has interest in participating or staying around for your survey. So I would strongly encourage you to do it at the launch of your Zoom. You can keep individuals in a waiting room while they're providing their polling information, but of course you cannot deny them access because they do not participate in your poll, okay? So once you're in the polling option for the Zoom, you're going to start creating what information you want to put in that poll. So I think it's best first to help an individual understand why we are collecting demographic information, the purpose it serves, and what is the qualitative expectation of its collection. So you may start off with something like, did you know that the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources is a federal recipient of financial assistance to deliver educational programming and leading research? Then you may go into something with a second question that notes we're required to collect demographic information of all individuals who participate in our programs and activities. The purpose of collecting this demographic information ensures that our programs are delivered in a non-discriminatory way. So me, as the recipient or the participant in your program, now understand why you're just throwing this information in front of me, right? I always say that you start off with something soft and then you go into something more difficult. Then you may want to start off with your first question, asking about their gender. As we move forward to more diversity, equity, inclusion, and respect goals and things of that nature, you may start it off with, are you a veteran? That's something everyone can be willing to identify with, or a disability status, and so on and so forth. Then after that, of course, I would go into identifying their ethnicity, right? Hispanic or not Hispanic. The United States Census identifies the racial categories that we utilize today, but more so specifically, when you're collecting demographic information in regards to ethnicity and race, they must be separate. So when we go into the racial categories, of course, you're going to go ahead and start identifying what those racial categories are. So here in particular, you will say, what is your racial category, right? I'm just gonna go like that. And make sure it's anonymous. Make sure these questions are anonymous because everyone in the room don't need to know who said what and what said what. Then here you'll give them a question, and then here you'll start picking out the answer choices in regards to that. So all 7 racial categories should be listed right here. So then after you do that information, you want to ensure, like I said, the racial and ethnic information is separate to ensure that the aggregated compositions are not duplicated or it doesn't create a variance in the statistical reporting. Once your poll has been saved after that, as Dee Dee demonstrated, you can launch your poll. Okay, you want me to give you an answer? Yeah. Then your poll is ready to be launched inside of Zoom. And I'm not gonna try to attempt to launch it because then I'm gonna delete Jeff's poll and all of that. But you would do that. I would recommend, of course, that you keep those individuals again in the waiting room with a message indicating for them to complete the poll so they know why they're sitting in the waiting room, that there is a poll that is active in the system waiting their participation so they can get access to the training. If they elect to not participate in the poll, or you only receive 90% participation, completion of the poll, you still cannot deny them federal financial assistance. And over here, I tried to go ahead and put a bunch of examples, and hopefully you can see that. That's large enough for you to see. You create the questions, you start off with the soft language, you go into all of the different demographic information. You are able to create about 25 different polls at one time. That's the limitation. This is about 10 questions or 10 question poll. I would also add a question in regards to letting them know that this information is voluntary. We hope you take a moment to identify who you are to help us measure the effectiveness of our inclusive outreach efforts and ensure we're reaching and serving all individuals equitably. Do you understand or I don't understand? And then of course, they have an option. I elect to not self-identify at this time, but I also understand that if I wish not to provide this information, it does not affect my ability to participate in this program or any future programs that delivered by the University of Maryland Extension. I know that's a lot and I'm trying to be mindful of your time. What questions do you have of me?
So Latoya, this is Jackie, and just reading the text, I think the biggest and most important thing for our group is that when we put together this written documentation, that we know we have the exact questions that we should be asking for teaching effectiveness. And we know for registration that we should be, the recommendation is that everybody should have a required registration for teaching events, and that Zoom automatically collects people's first names and their emails, and that at a minimum, we should be asking in that registration form that people understand that we have a program assurance statement. So it would be great to have the exact verbiage for that, and that individuals that are registering also check off whether reasonable accommodations are needed and how to contact that. So I think what would be very helpful for our faculty is to get the specific questions that we should all be asking across the board. And then when it comes to the demographic data, is what should we be asking? What are those? Do we just go off of this is what we have to collect for humor, so this is what we're going to be collecting as a, instead of saying, well, you might ask if somebody is a veteran or not. I don't think our humorist asks if we have veterans or not. So I think for that standpoint, will you be able to provide us a list of the appropriate questions asked correctly with the correct responses? Because again, I know for gender, there's only 2 genders that the federal government recognizes. And so can we only put those 2 and then prefer not to answer? Or, can we put the 7 or 8 that other institutions recognize? So will you be able to provide our faculty with that list?
You gave me a lot of questions there, so I'm gonna try to remember them and go through them. Okay, so we created an administrative procedure dated June 15th of 2020, which identifies the correct terminology in regards to requesting an accommodation from the college level, the county level, and down to the educator level. And also in regards to the reasonable accommodation statements specifically. Yes, we can create a guide with those same questions and same requirements. Now, the reason I utilize veteran and things of that nature is because we have to also start thinking broader. Currently, yes, inside of humors, we only collect the 7 racial categories, ethnicity, and 2 genders. There is only 2 genders. We're not going to collect beyond 2 genders until the law changes to say that we can collect beyond 2 genders. If we start collecting information that is not federally approved, we're going to have variances in our data, right? And we can't have variances in our data. Now, I understand the state of Maryland allows gender identity and expression and things of that nature, but again, that is for employment purposes. It's not for programmatic purposes. So because programmatically, we can only collect male and female, that is what our system will be designed for. That's what our data collection documents will be designed for. And that's the expectation of faculty and staff to collect demographics for. On the other grand scheme of things, of course, the college is creating a diversity, equity, inclusion, and respect plan. Extension has a role in that, just like every other academic unit. And Mays they're participating in that as well. And we're working through that construct of what that looks like. Of course, you know, you're going to have someone who's going to work on your humorous data and all of that with Jeff and Chinzi to make sure that it fits what the government is requesting of us. Now, when I say we have to start looking more broadly, there's opportunities to be able to collect demographic information for particular audiences and pursue grants and be able to tap into audiences that we have never used to known that exist. And the reason why I say, let's say agriculture veterans, before we did not, well, we never collected information in regards to agriculture veterans. But as of 2017, the National Agriculture Statistical Service now provides the Ag Census with agriculture veterans. That is a whole nother audience that we could be meeting with and delivering educational programming for. So as long as you know that the guide that we provide will have currently right now the minimum information inside of humors with the expectation that there will be a revision to show broader audiences, I'm completely fine with that. Okay. Hopefully I answered all your questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you did is, I think the answer was yes, we're going to provide you with the minimum questions, and everything's always updated as we go. And so as long as when something is updated, we send out emails to the entire faculty that say, here is the updated, you know, here are updates that you should be making to your demographic data collection. I think that's the important part.
Okay.
And I wanted to interject, some of this is in the chat, but a couple of things. One is we're capturing the chat because that helps to create an FAQ, frequently asked questions, that we can develop as a support document. So there's that. Also, there was some questions about people completing some of this while they're in the hold room. And so there's some potential challenges with that, but you know, we'll follow up. But the reality is that if that's when we're collecting it and then folks joined later, you know, we already started the program, then we might miss them and we wouldn't collect that data. So it's a little bit of a challenge for us to intuitively know, when do we put these questions up? You know, do you wait and ask for the demographic data after you've done your introduction, or something, kind of give people a few more minutes to get into the room and so forth, and then collect that minimum data, so that eventually it'll be a little bit of an intuitiveness for us to know. But as was mentioned further, one of the last points is that our attempt today was at minimum, you know, again, what are the things that are required for you to collect, that you would then, you know, to put this information into humors. So as was mentioned, we will provide that. I also would encourage people to think it's really the same approach that you would have had if someone had come to your face-to-face gathering. What have you historically done? You know, they would have registered, you would have known they probably came in and they signed in. Maybe you collected their email, and then on a separate form, a separate area, which is by their choice, then this is where, you know, gender, ethnicity, and race might have been, you would have asked them for that, and collected it. So think about it in that mindset. And when would you have set that up? As they've entered the room, maybe where they went to get coffee, I don't know, you know, this type of an approach. So, but I think at minimum, our hope or goal with this is to make certain that we share back with you, you know, here's the suggested minimums that you need to include if you choose to use, you know, this method or this approach, both for teaching effectiveness, but with the virtual webinars, as we know, in order for us to include those as a direct contact, we have to have this information. It's, I think, as before, there was kind of a Band-Aid approach, but we're advocating for this again because so many of you indicated this is how you want to continue to teach, or make this as an option that's coming forward. So
So
I do want to note a couple of things.
Okay.
And I would agree, you can start the poll maybe 5 minutes after, you know, you start the training or whatever the case may be. I would also encourage you to make sure you have your Injustice for All poster as one of your slides, because we are in a virtual format, so they cannot walk into a building and see that information. But, you know, you're going to have to find out when's the best time to introduce the information. because it may be different for different audiences. You said something else, but I can't remember now.
Okay, I also wanted to draw attention to, as you go into UMass, as you've experienced, the reality is our three numbers have to match, the gender, ethnicity, and race. And so that there's a pause with that, because with that said, if it's not collected, then as mentioned, those are the ones that we can count for direct reports. And those, there's options to put, larger groups into indirect, but then further, you can put all of those into your curriculum vitae and so forth. But for the federal report, we have to, we can only include those folks that chose to share that information with us.
So Jeff, you just said what I was going to say is, you may have 100 people register for your workshop. It's a great number, but it counts for nothing. You may have 50 people show up to your workshop and be educated, and that's the number you're going to use on your CV and your promotion documents. But if only 30 people fill out the demographic information, those are the 30 people that you put into UMass. So that's how the system currently works.
And to underscore, from the federal perspective, that's why they're only collecting educational contacts from people in our state, which has caused some frustration, of course, because many, with the way that we're set up, we may have folks that come across from state lines. Similarly, they may join virtually, but that's why the county is asked for, in UMass that we go in. But again, it's because the federal dollars, that's what they're asking for, to collect that data, to respond against those monies that come at the federal level. So Dr. Hicks has underscored NIFA will count virtual educational programs as direct contacts. So that's been a great question that's come. But as you think about that, that's just as you would have delivered in person, you do a virtual presentation and people join during via Zoom, that's direct contact. You're meeting with them. There's an overview in the UMass guide that gives the breakdown of those that, let's say, educational delivery that can be included as direct contacts. And so there's a breakdown of that as well. You might have an individual consultation, you may have a phone conference, you may have email exchange, but that you're delivering educational content and so forth, as compared to, we're chit-chatting with people, so it's back to, as was mentioned earlier, about professional ethics, just trying to sort out the spirit of the intent and what you're delivering to them and so forth. But there's a variety of different ways that direct contacts can be included. So I do want to underscore, I'm sensitive to time, and I want to, there's some thanks from people for us providing this to help understand the process more fully. But I do want to underscore, if you're like me, you need information layered to you. So, I may need to hear it, but then these follow-ups that we're speaking about, where you'll have some visual support pieces that we will send to you directly. We'll share with the whole organization, of course, but because you registered, you'll get it directly to your inbox. And then the tutorials that we mentioned that are short video vignettes, that maybe some people learn better that way. So there's some follow-up, and then drawing on this chat as a way to develop an FAQ and so forth is something that we'll draw very heavily on as well. So with that, I want to wrap up. Just sincere thanks to Jackie and to Dee Dee and to LaToya for hopping on and giving us this detail today. And I'm thankful that all of you joined. Of course, the video will be available. These other pieces we'll promote out to you, as well as these printed pieces that we've been referencing. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.